Hi, I'm Patrick Heller, Head of Legal and Economic Programs at the Natural Resource Governance Institute. And I'm here today with Widhyawan Prawiraatmadja, who's the head of the Performance Management Unit at the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources in Indonesia. What we'll be talking about today is the impact that the recent fall in commodity prices is having on Indonesia's management of oil, gas, and minerals, and on the economy more broadly. So just to begin, I'm interested in your perspective. What is the overall impact of the commodity price fall in Indonesia? Has it been positive, negative, or a mix?
Well, the lower commodity prices impact on Indonesia has been, of course, reducing some of the government revenues because we're still producing and exporting to some extent oil, coal, and other minerals, natural gas as well. But in oil, we are actually a net oil importing country. So the lower oil prices actually giving some good thing for Indonesia because we are a big consumers. And in the past, we are actually subsidizing some of these prices. And now that lower oil prices give us some momentum to be able to reduce the subsidy significantly. And we are also adjusting with the lower revenues from the other commodity prices. But we are quite a diversified economy. Yes, there's some impact on the economic growth, but I think the country manages relatively well.
Now, I know Indonesia has, for many years, been planning ambitious reforms to try and reinvigorate investment in oil and gas exploration and production. And that's a process that predated the fall in commodity prices. I'm interested in knowing a little bit about whether the market shift has changed those plans or has changed the way that the government is going about trying to execute them.
Yeah, the government, this is a new government, by the way. They just started in last October. And the president has his own vision and mission in terms of bring the economy through some of reform measures. And I mentioned about the elimination or reduction of the fuel subsidy. But other than that, the government is trying to make sure that the investors who are actually going to participate in the economic development of Indonesia, giving the win-win situation for the country. So yes, we are going to make sure that the governance will be there. No corruption, no hanky-pankies, and reducing the rent-seeking activities. We try to simplify all the, for example, permits, approvals, and making sure that there is a coordination between the central and local governments to make sure that the investors have more certainty and clarity in terms of what they can do in terms of when they actually coming into Indonesia. That means is basically in reducing the time from, for example, we need to monetizing our resources, as well as, for example, building generation capacity in power sectors. Just a few examples.
Now, as you mentioned, Indonesia has recently undergone a transition to a new government after last year's elections. And I know that with this new government came quite a lot of hope from the public that this would be a moment of real reform and change in the country.
Yes, I know.
I'm wondering, from the perspective of oil and gas management, what has been the public perspective on, or what is the way in which the public has participated in contributing to the government's decisions now on the reform path to take?
Well, oil and gas will always be intertwined with politics, so it's not quite easy. And in Indonesia, the new government made a bold move in reducing the subsidy, but the opposition, of course, used that to, try to make the current government unpopular and for their own political advantage, which is that happens everywhere. But the thing that we need to take advantage of in this slower oil price regime is on how we actually continue our reform. First and foremost, we know that we don't have that much of oil and gas reserves compared to the other resource-rich nations, and we are big consumers, right? Big customers. So we relying or dependent so much on these fossil fuels, and more than 60% we dependent on oil and gas. Then when you add coal, and it goes all the way up to 90%, right? So, I mean, wow, we actually have a lot of renewable resources available, such as geothermal, hydro, the biofuels that are kind of neglected because we didn't have any focus on that. We are now importing a lot of petroleum fuel, also crude oil, for domestic consumptions. But that creating a worsening of the trade balance, current account deficit and things like that. We have to do better on making the people awareness of that we cannot continue on doing like this because it's going to be unsustainable, and then it's not quite good for the environment and things like that. So we have to shift our paradigm towards making it more targeting more share for the renewable energy in the energy mix. And we have some of these things that are more competitive than others. For example, our geothermal is just there. Our hydro is abundant. The solar is also abundant. Wind is actually there, and it's just a matter of government trying to be consistent in shifting the development actions towards facilitating that type of energy security measure.
Well, it sounds like you have no shortage of challenges, but also opportunities as well. I'd like to thank you very much for your time and wish you best of luck in the reform process.
Thank you, Patrick.